Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Genesis Data Dive Show. We have a lot to cover this evening. I put together a small little file that I mentioned that I was going to do last night, looking at performance from the 2021 Farmers and then 2021 U.S. Open to see how correlating it was, and then have done the same for the 2025 Farmers this week for the Genesis. So I have that file. Of course, we're going to take a look at Torrey Pines in depth in terms of statistics, what plays well here, what shots, shot types, players generally, all of that. And we're going to take a look at the field and figure out who we might want to focus on this week as we move forward for the Genesis. So we got a lot to cover. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research regarding the course and prior winners of the tournament and patterns of those previous winners. Didn't do that for the Genesis this week, considering the tournament has moved to Torrey Pines instead of its usual host at Riviera. So nothing this week. But if you want to see usually the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe, and he's going to be adding to that starting this week. So I'm excited to see what he's putting together and sending out Wednesday afternoons. I believe he's going to have some projected ownerships, some deeper dive into some of his metrics that he puts in. So it should be quite interesting. You really are missing out if you are not subscribed to his articles, so make sure you're doing that and go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. And lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Did you wager anything with the Super Bowl? Same game parlays, anything like that? Play DFS. How did the outcome turn out for you individually? And then moving forward, now that football is officially over, for Torrey Pines and for the Genesis this week, who's your favorite? What kind of players are you focused on? How much are you taking from the Farmers and moving it to the Genesis? So would be interested to hear from you all on that. Put your thoughts and opinions in chat. Would love to hear from you all. And if you're not able to watch the show live, put it in the comments. I'll always get to them down there as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 Genesis. And we are going to start what we normally do on a Sunday night, but it was not out last night. The GCSAA tournament fact sheet has indeed released a tournament fact sheet for the Genesis this week. You see that we are playing just Torrey Pines South in La Jolla, the main course from the Farmers. Remember, the Farmers is a two-course rotation, Torrey Pines North and Torrey Pines South. The South is the main course, the long, brutally difficult course. Hosted the 2021 U.S. Open, hosted the 2008 U.S. Open. Just a great venue for golf. So I don't want to go spend too much time here, as again, nothing has really changed. But in case you did not see the show last night, long course, the longest course by par this year on the PGA Tour and generally every year. Almost 7,800 yards, 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s. We are on pure Poa-annua greens. The rough is kept at 4 inches long, very thick, difficult to play out of. The greens are very small, 5,000. They are small, not very small. 5,000 square feet, which is smaller than the PGA Tour average. Not a whole lot of fairway, only 24 to 27 yards wide in the landing areas. One hole with water in play, that is the pond that protects the 18th green. And then, let's see, some more here. So indeed, it is actually longer than Kapalua. Green size there. Poa annua greens. Yeah, so nothing has changed from last night and the Farmers GCSAA tournament fact sheet, but I did want to provide the update or the GCSA tournament fact sheet since it did come out today. You'll notice here this last note: yardages and cuts are the same as they were for the Farmers. So this should set up just as similarly as it did for the Farmers. So now we're going to move to what we normally do or start the show with on Monday nights, which is a look at the extended forecast for the tournament. You'll note that Thursday we've got some rain and the winds are going to be picking up. Friday, it does look like the winds do calm down a little bit. The rain seems to be out of here. I mentioned how we weren't going to look at the forecast last night. This has calmed down quite a bit. I believe the forecast, at least yesterday, was calling for 20-mile-an-hour winds, akin to what you see here throughout most of Thursday and Friday. So it does seem like the forecast has calmed down a little bit, but there is rain in the forecast. And then the weekend looks fairly decent, high of about 60 with very, very little wind. But we could be looking at possibly some delays depending on how much rain La Jolla gets leading up to the tournament. But we do have some wind to factor in, as you can see. And of course, we'll update this and take a look at this at the beginning of Wednesday night's show to see if the forecast has changed. Not really anything we're going to be able to do in terms of wave stacking. At least I don't think, considering this is a small field and they go off in one wave. They're not playing front nine, back nine. I don't know if we're going to be able to try and wave stack per se, unless this really does come to fruition where the morning is a lot better than the afternoon. Again, we'll just have to see come Wednesday night. But there's a look at the forecast for La Jolla and the Farmers 2.5 days out from the tournament. So now we'll move to Fantasy National, and there have been 2 field changes. So far, 2 players have decided not to play. The first being Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk has withdrawn. He was replaced in the field by Mark Hubbard. And then earlier today, Tiger withdrew. Tiger is not playing this week. He was replaced in the field by Jake Knapp. So do make note of those 2 field changes. Tiger and Chris Kirk are not playing this week. I've starred Lee Hodges and Justin Lauer due to the fact that they were originally loaded in here and they missed from the Aeon Swing 5. Okay. With that forecast that we just looked, or that we just saw from Windfinder, let's go ahead and take a look at performance in moderate and windy conditions. And we'll have to use 2024. Yeah, that should be enough rounds. We've got 23. Most players are in the teens. So a little bit of a smaller sample size, but in moderate and windy conditions, last year, they haven't updated any windy conditions yet for 2025. So last year, your top performers in moderate and windy conditions: Scotty, Adam Scott, Denny McCarthy, Sahith Theegala, Jordan Spieth, Russell Henley, Billy Horschel, Sam Burns, Siwoo Kim, and Andrew Novak. With that forecast and Torrey Pines in general, in fact, let me bring up the Farmers leaderboard. I brought up the 2021 U.S. Open, but let me bring up the Farmers. I'm bringing this up to go through later, but you see that we did have a couple of rounds of average and a couple of rounds of difficult for the Farmers, despite the fact that the winning score was only -8. The North course provides a lot of this average difficulty, if you will. So to get out of that, and then what I want to look at is when rounds are difficult relative to par. Again, I think this is going to be this is going to be more difficult than the Farmers because players aren't going to have Torrey Pines North to take advantage of or to help their scores. And we're going to get, or at least the forecast is saying, we're going to get more wind than we did for the Farmers. So when rounds have been difficult relative to par, going back to the beginning of last year, your top performers are Scotty, Rory, Russell Henley, Ludwig Aubert, Akshay Bhatia, Colin Morikawa, Seabass, Christian Bezuidenhout, Billy Horschel, Adam Scott, Tommy Fleetwood, and Andrew Novak. And then the last thing we'll take a quick look at that we also did last night, just kind of a quick review, if you will. Let's take a look at long courses. Torrey is the longest course on the PGA Tour. So since the beginning of last year, your top performers on long courses: Rory, Scotty, Taylor Pendrith, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Aubert, Thomas Dietrich, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, and Max Homa. All right, I'll keep those filters selected for now. Actually, let me take off the long course. But 2024 and 2025, at least for now. What we're going to do, we're going to go to Microsoft Excel. Let's take a look at some deep statistical dive into Torrey Pines. Now, remember, this will be a slightly misleading because this is for the Farmers. The Farmers has the North course as part of its rotation. We'll have to be mindful of that. But let's go ahead and take a look at some stats here for the Farmers, for Torrey, and especially how it played 2 weeks ago compared to how it normally plays. So you see, for Torrey, off the tee, despite the fact that a lot is made about off the tee, and I believe I made a pretty big deal about off the tee, statistically it doesn't lead to a whole lot, at least for the players that finish in the top 30. You see, it's 25% less important than the average full field course. However, distance is what matters. So off the tee as a whole statistic, not really contributing a whole lot, but look at distance. It's 30% or 31.5% more important than the average full field course. You do have, it has decreased slightly over the past 3 years, but this is the longest course on tour. Players are going to have to hit driver on every hole, basically. Distance matters. Distance really does matter here. The approach, a little bit less than it has been in years past. The around the green has taken a dip 2 straight years. Putting was actually a pretty big factor a couple weeks ago. So if we look across, like, all of these strokes gained are negative against the full field averages. You know, you're still going to have to hit your irons very, very well. Distance, of course, matters. We're going to be looking at a lot of POA and a putting. And I still strongly feel that around the green is a decent factor, just because these greens are small. It's difficult. Players are going to have to rely on their short game to salvage some pars. So as much as nothing is, or as little as nothing is jumping off the page here, I do value the fact that the off the tee has been consistent. It might not be much, but it's still consistent. Approach is going to be, I think this is a slight outlier. In fact, this is the lowest that by a significant margin. This is the lowest that the irons have played at the Farmer. So if we remove that, it gets closer to full field course average. We'll look at some putting. Of course, we'll be looking at some distance. It matters here. I'm a little surprised that the greens have been less the past couple of years or so against the full field average, full field course average. Still slightly more important, so definitely going to be looking at some greens. I know we looked at greens on long courses for the Farmers. Probably going to be looking at some greens when it's difficult. Moving to scoring, ignore this. Again, this is from the Farmers, and the Farmers has the North course as part of its rotation. They're not playing the North course. And look, the bogey avoidance is actually higher in terms of birdies gained. And it comes to fruition here as well. So we talked a little bit about it last night with subscriber Phil, who was in chat. We're going to be looking at quite a bit of a bogey avoidance this week. That's going to be our main focus, is bogey avoidance. I don't think we're going to want to ignore the birdies gained, though, because, again, this was a very low outlier. If we remove that, the birdies gained is actually more important than the full field course average as well. So it's not enough to just avoid bogeys. The even par is good around Torrey Pines, but it's not going to win. So we might want to look at some birdies gained when it's difficult, birdies gained on long courses. Players are going to have to make a few birdies around Torrey Pines to win, and at least be in contention to win. But our main focus is bogey avoidance. All right, looking at par threes, fours, and fives. I like the par threes here. They've been fairly consistent. They've taken a small dip the past couple of years, but they all play, roughly the same in terms of importance. So we're just going to be looking at total par threes. Now, par fours, much different story. The par fours, you've got the plethora of 450 to 500, which is where the majority of these strokes gained are coming from. You do have a few 400, 450, but I think this is more of a reflection of Torrey Pines North with this specific subset of data. We're going to be focused on this 450 to 5. 6 of the 10 par 5s, 6 of the 10 par 4s at Torrey Pines fall to this range. So I think this is where we're going to put a lot of our focus in the par 4s. And in the par 5s, they play very, very important, but they're pretty evenly split. Now, we won't get any under 550 more than likely at the South course. We're going to get, at least on the scorecard, you have 2 from here and 2 from here. So pretty even split. We'll just look at total par 5s. And then lastly, we'll take a quick gander at proximity. Total procs, not a big deal. About 10% less important than the full field course average. I'm a little surprised to see that the two long ranges, 175 and 200 plus, are both negative as well. It's a little surprising to me. But the data is what it is. Now, 200 plus, I can see that mattering a little bit just due to the par 5s and these long par 4s. Players are going to have to be pretty good with their long irons. I think we've got a little bit of an extreme outlier here in the 150 to 175. Like if we remove that, we come back to basically where we're at across the board here with Torrey. So there's a look at some deeper statistical dive into Torrey, at least how it plays for the Farmers. While I'm at it, let me bring up the U.S. Open. And we're specifically just going to look at 2021. But the U.S. Open was played entirely on the South course. We'll see how it played. Torrey Pines, off the tee, not much. Not much. The approach is where it's at. 4 versus a 2.15 for the Farmer, so almost double on the approach. The around the green, almost a full shot more, so that's still the same. Putting, decent factor. So this is the way the U.S. Open played in 2021. You have to be very good with your irons. You're going to miss some greens. You're going to have to be tidy with the short game. The distance, not as much as what Winged Foot was. This is what that line is. But still more than the Farmers in general. So still going to be looking at some distance. Bogey avoidance, a 4. Now, there were a few birdies gained. So, like I was mentioning, Phil, I don't think we want to ignore the birdies gained. But definitely going to be looking at bogey avoidance. Mainly par 3s. This is more like it. These are all pretty even in terms of contribution to the par 3 total strokes gained. Par 4s are massive. And in fact, they set it up, the U.S. Open, with a 500 plus. I am thinking it's probably the 450 to 5. And then the par 5s, they set it up extremely long, 650. Not too worried about that, but big numbers here in the longer proximities as well. Well, we'll come back to Fantasy National and take a look at a few of the things that we've seen this week and what's going to play. Off the tee, I still think off the tee to some extent will play, but it's really about approach. So your top approach players in the field this week, early on in 2025, have been Sepp Straka, Scotty, Justin Thomas, Nick Taylor, JJ Spawn, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Lucas Glover, Mav McNeely, and Tom Hoagie. Again, the players as are starred are alternates. I don't know if you've seen the 2 field changes, Phil, but Chris Kirk and Tiger have withdrawn. They've been replaced in the field by Mark Hubbard and Jake Knapp. So do make note of that as you are moving forward this week, that Kirk and Tiger are out. Definitely don't want to ignore around the green. Your top around the green players so far early in 2025 in the field this week: Hideki, Cam Davis, Justin Rose, Seabez, Davis Thompson, Sung Jae, Michael Kim, Andrew Novak, Mackenzie Hughes, and Daniel Berger. And then we'll go to putting on POA. We'll extend this, be on Cam Young as a sleeper. I bet him outright at Phoenix, and he played okay. I generally shy away from him in DFS because he is so Jekyll and Hyde. He is liable to... he's just as liable to runner-up that he's done 6 times as he is to miss the cut. I just prefer to play or to have my exposure to those types of players being the outright market. That's just my preference. No Tiger. Yep. All right, your top putters on California POA-ANA in the past 3 years: Max Homa, Denny McCarthy, Matt McNeely, Tom Hoagie, Matthew Pavone, Jason Day, Sung Jae, Seamus Power, Colin Morikawa, and Sam Stevens. Now, we will take a look at spike percentage here. Again, this is the percentage of rounds that a player spikes or accrues this amount in terms of putting. This is on our per round basis. So you've got Austin Eckroat. Let me make sure I have him at the top of your screen here. Austin Eckroat, 29% of the time. So 2 out of 7 rounds. It's not a lot, but 2 of his 7 rounds on California POA-ANA, he's gained 3. He gained 4.5 the first round of the Farmers last year, and then gained 3 another time. You've got Obear, Max Homa, Seamus Power 18% of the time in quite a few rounds. Sung Jae has put California POA and spiked on California POA a lot. 14% in 21 rounds. A little bit more historical. He gained quite a bit at the Pebble last year. Let's see, the Genesis. So Riviera, Farmers in 2022. So he spiked a few times. Let's see, Dietrich, Clark, Stevens, Keegan, Hoagie. Even Hoagie spiked 10% of the time on California POA. So there's the players that have spiked the most. See if I can't highlight these guys. I don't think I can grab Eckroat. Yeah, I can. So Eckroat down to Tommy. Those are the guys who have done double-digit percentage in terms of spike, meaning they've accrued 3 or more in a round. Good evening, Derek. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a good waste management. Mine was pretty bad. So 2 weeks in a row, we're going to try and right the ship. Hope you're doing well. Waste management kicked my butt. JJ Spawn withdrawal, which I played a little bit of JJ Spawn, but I was lucky enough or fortunate enough that I stayed away from him mostly because he's always a withdrawal risk. Scotty's bad back 9, having no Dietrich. I was surprised that I didn't have Dietrich because he was in my top 30 in my rankings. But for whatever reason, he just never really popped up on my radar last week. Probably should. I mean, obviously should have. So, yeah, I'm with you. The waste management was not very good for me either. So we're going to try and correct that for the Genesis this week. So anyway, there's your best spike putters on POA, California POA. I only do like 10 lineups per week. Couldn't fit him in. Yeah, I mean, I play more than that, but I don't play a whole lot. I was really high on Eckroat. His miscut hurt me quite a bit. I used a lot of Charlie Hoffman. That hurt. His miscut hurt. Going back to Scotty this week, a lot of it will depend on the ownership, I think. Despite the fact that he was 60% last week, I was just confident with him at TBC Scottsdale. Came back to bite me. A lot, I think, will depend on the ownership. I reserved my lineups today. All I know is that Scotty's at 12-3 and that there's no 5K range. That's all I know. So I'll start digging into that tomorrow when I make my mixed condition model, start seeing where the ownerships lie and stuff. I don't try to get into that on Monday nights because when I look deep into the data like I do tonight with you all, I don't want pricing to factor into any of my opinions, and just so seeing them all at the same price allows me to be objective. That's just from my personal standpoint. And I don't know if you've heard, Derek. I mentioned this to Phil just a little bit ago. 2 field changes. Chris Kirk has withdrawn. Wherever he is on this list. Chris Kirk and Tiger have withdrawn. So Tiger is not playing this week. Make sure you are well aware of that moving forward. Okay. That's it for the strokes gained. But feel free to keep coming in with the questions. All right. We're going to go to fairways and greens. And really, it's all about the distance here. It's all about distance at Torrey. Can't run Tiger. Yeah. I think a few people are upset. They just want to see him play, not the TGL. Um, so it sucks, but it is what it is. All right, so we're going to take a look at distance, just because it was so very, very important for the U.S. Open, for the Farmers in general. All right, so when courses are long, when driver is forced into players' hands, your top distance players in the field this week: Rory, Ben On, Wyndham Clark, Ludwig Aubert, Jordan Spieth. Surprisingly, when driver is forced in players' hands, Jordan Spieth is, what, 6th, 5th in this field. Taylor Pendrith, Kevin Yu, Jaeger, and Justin Thomas. Saw the odds today. Shocked to see Gary Woodland at, I'm guessing that's plus 1,600 or so. Along with Homa's been so bad. I can understand Homa being an extreme long shot. Woodland played very well at Scottsdale. I mean, he's coming in off 3 top 25s to start the year. I think it's more so that, I mean, just in a loaded field like this, just out of curiosity, how has he done at the Farmers? So he missed the cut last year. He hadn't been the greatest, at least recently. He did have a string there of, 4 straight top 20s in the late 2010s. Okay. I mean, the irons, the ball striking in general is great right now, which you love to see. He's quite interesting. I don't hate that, Derek, in terms of thinking about potential long shots. Homa, on the other hand, Homa's been really bad lately. Been rough. Been a rough go for Max. Lost 5. Lost 6.5 at Pebble. The ball and the off the tee has been hit and miss. He's like something in the past year. He's just lost with the driver. Good driving. Gary Woodland has been solid there. He has. Absolutely. No denying that. But yeah, Max, there was a stretch last year where Max lost every single tournament off the tee until the Pro Tour. And it still doesn't look like it's gotten much better. So, I don't know, just rough times for Max. Gonna outright bet Hadwin. Interesting. We'll look at this a little bit later as well, but I'm just interested and curious on. So, he's a very good putter. Let's see, what's he done at, not the Genesis dummy, or Farmers? Been fairly middling. He's not an off the tee player, so I'm not as concerned with that. I wouldn't let his top 10 at the Waste Management force you into it. He generally plays desert golf really well. Like if we look at his typical performances in the desert, like top 10, he generally plays desert golf pretty well. Like the the Amex, top 10, top 20. Like I think of Hadwin more on desert golf. Pop on harder courses. He has. Let's see. Like Valspar. Valspar is very tough. Now, granted, this isn't 2017, but Valspar is very tough. He won that. The Memorial, extremely tough. Top 5 did last year. Top 5 the Genesis last year. Granted, we're not at Riv, but yeah, what's his form like right now? Other than the Waste Management, hadn't been great. I'm a little concerned with the irons. like I said, I'm not putting a whole lot into last week. Yes, top 10s are top 10s, and you got to give him credit. But he generally plays desert golf pretty well. I'm still concerned with the fact that his irons have been very underwhelming, except for last week. Again, the most important opinion is yours. So if you have a strong feeling on it, I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but it wouldn't be the first name that comes to mind. Phil is how I would phrase that. So there's a look at distance on long courses when drivers forced in hands. Who has the distance to contend here at Torrey? We're also going to look at greens. Let's look at greens when it's difficult, because it's going to be pretty difficult this week. Hasn't Pavone also been very good on difficult courses? He was good in the last U.S. Open, and don't forget he won the Farmers last year. It's another name to think about. Although he was in really good form leading into that Farmers win, he hadn't done much this year so far. So your top greens in your greens gained players when rounds have been difficult, going back to going back to the start of last year. Scotty, Ludwig, Sepp Straka, Tony Finau, Kevin Yu, Andrew Novak, Shane Lowry, Cam Young, Corey Connors, and Victor Hovland. So players that can hit greens when it's difficult. Take a quick look at greens on long courses as well. I mean, I that's why you all ask the questions, and I'm never afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I've been wrong more often than I've been right so far in 2025. But just giving you my perspective, what I see, especially looking at stats and trends. Your top greens gained players on long courses. Corey Connors, somebody who always plays U.S. Opens pretty well. Scotty, Tony Finau, Oberg, Kevin Yu, Sam Stevens, who's been very good at Torrey. Victor, Rory, Max Homa, Matt McNeely. Just because you all are talking about him quite a bit, Pavone. Oh, he won he won last year. It was a big shock, but he won in 2024. Coming over from the DP World Tour, but he was also in good form. Like, he top 10'd the Sony. The Amex was middling, but he still made the cut and gained on the field in terms of strokes. And then he wins the Farmers and he top 5 Pebble. Like, he was in good form last year coming into this. Now, like, look at his form in 2025. It's not good. The irons have been hideous. I mean, really hideous. Losing 5, losing 4, losing 6, losing 4.5. Like, I can understand the reasoning behind it, because he top 5 the U.S. Open last year, which is always very difficult. A former winner at Torrey. Like, I get it, but he was also in much, much better form, particularly with the irons, than what he is now, which is why I'm not excited about Pavone, at least, before I really dig in and make my model and all that. But just from a thought experiment standpoint, wasn't excited about Pavone. Okay, we'll move to birdies and bogeys, and as I mentioned, our main focus is going to be bogey avoidance. So your top bogey avoiders when rounds have been difficult, going back to the beginning of last year: Scotty, Rory, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Oberg, Siwoo Kim, Denny McCarthy, Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, and Matt Fitzpatrick. I do want to take a look at birdies gained, just very quickly. That's what I'm here for. That's what you all have questions. I might not get to every single question, but I'll do my best. That's what I'm here for, Derek, because I'm doing the research with you. I mean, I've done a little bit today, But this is why I enjoy doing these shows, is that I'm doing this research with you, talking through it with you. Because there's a lot of times I'm surprised when somebody mentions a name or says something. So, birdies gained when it's difficult, because even though pars are good scores, guys are going to have to make some birdies to win this tournament. So your top birdies gained players when it's difficult: Scotty, Dunlap, Matt McNeely, Henley, Burns, Hubbard, Obear, Ben On, Corey Connors, Rory, and Wyndham Clark. All right, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because I still want to look at some of the early look file. And I did put together a quick like Farmers to U.S. Open 2021 file and things of that nature. So we're going to speed this here a little bit. Your top par 4 performers from 450 to 500. Sorry, let me uncheck that, or at least the difficult. Scotty, Rory, Hideki, Obear, McNeely, Henley, Grazerman, Morikawa, Sungjae, and Spieth. Oh, Taylor and Berger. My apologies, there's 12. So those 12 have been the best at the length of par 4s that are most prevalent here at Torrey. Oh, skip proximity. Let's not skip proximity. Your top proximity players, we'll look at 200 plus. Novak, Hoagie, Robert McIntyre, Ben On, JJ Spawn, Finau, Grazerman, Kevin Yu, Batia, and Fitzpatrick, and Jake Knapp. Usually go heavy Benny. You're going to be able to putt on Poa. I like Ben On in the style of player that he is, but you see, Poa is by far his worst surface. Anytime he's been at Torrey, he lost a 10th a couple of years ago. Let me swivel out of the way, but then it gets really bad. 8.5 a few years ago, 7. Putting is not his deal, and it doesn't look like putting on Poa is his deal. So that would be a concern of mine. However, he did just gain at Pebble. I like Ben On because of the distance, the off the tee. His irons haven't been in good form. So, I want to like Ben On, but there's a lot of red there. There's a lot of red. There's your top 200 plus prox players, and then to round out the Fantasy National portion of the show, we'll look at par 5s. Remember, we're mainly looking at these two ranges. So even though Scotty's number 1, he is fairly middling from 600 to 650. Just be aware of that. I would focus more so on players like Taylor Pendrith, top 25, Billy Horschel, top 10 in both of the ranges that we're looking at. Davis Thompson. Jason Day, 5th and 3rd. And look how much success he's had at Torrey. He takes advantage of the longer par 5s. Colin Morikawa, Rory, Hideki, 13th and 17th. So, I mean, he's 25th in terms of total par 5s, but in the two links that matter here at Torrey, he's actually at his best, is Hideki. So, Andrew Novak, 16th and 14th. Nick Dunlap, 10th and 29th. All right, there's that. I'll bring us back to the strokes gained. We're going to go to Microsoft Excel just very, very quickly. First, I want to explain what I've done here. I'll zoom in a little bit. What I've done here, this is performance at the 2021 Farmers, and then how they played in the U.S. Open, if the player played in both. And I want to see how much correlation there was between the two. So somebody like Adam Hadwin, who's been talked about tonight, he finished top 20 at the Farmers that year. He made the cut at the U.S. Open. It isn't impressive, but he at least made the cut. Adam Scott, the same. Top 10 to a top 30, a T35. Okay. Now Brooks, a little bit of a outlier here, miscut, and then top 5's the U.S. Open, but it's Brooks. It's a U.S. Open. He generally plays well. For the most part, I'm not going to go through each of these players, but for the most part, it was fairly reasonable on how they did at the Farmers to the U.S. Open that year. Yes, the U.S. Open set up a whole lot different and difficult and all that, but like Xander, 2nd, 7th. John Rahm, 1st, John Rahm, 7th and 1st. Patrick Reed, 1st, wins the Farmers and then top 20'd the U.S. Open. You've also got players like Hoagie, missed the cut and then wasn't great. Cagely, missed the cut. Walker, not great. Watch Harmon win. Brian Harmon has a specific style of course that he is very good at. Farmers isn't it. So clip this whenever he inevitably wins next week, considering I'm giving him no chance. But I don't see it. Again, based on very, very loose math and eyeball tests and whatnot, it does seem like there was at least a little bit of correlation to how a player played the Farmers and then came back and played that U.S. Open. So how did players in the field this week perform at the Farmers a couple weeks ago? Andrew Novak, 3rd. Bo Hostler was a top 15. Several miscuts here. Of course, Harris English wins. He was 3rd at the U.S. Open in 2021. Some other notable names here that you might want to be on the lookout for, like Keegan, top 15s. He's generally played the Farmers pretty well, which surprises me because I don't think about Keegan on POA. Lee Hodges, who's not in the field, I need to remove him, but he was a top 10. Sam Stevens, runner-up, still a little salty about him dunking in the water on 18 because that would have been a really nice outright for 2025. Sung Jae, top 5. Taylor Pendrith, top 10. Thomas Dietrich, top 15. Now, he's coming off his first win, so maybe you don't want to be too excited about him, but he did play the Farmers pretty well. So I wanted to give you a look at that because I was quite interested on how a player played Torrey earlier in the year and then coming back to it. And then lastly, we'll go to the regular early look file, which I thought I had up. Of course I don't. It's the A+ stuff you get from me. Scared Stevens might be a trap this week. I mean, he very well could be. He wasn't great at the waste management, and I was pretty high on him again. But one of the reasons why I like Stevens is that he's just been good at Torrey. He's just been flat out good. 3 for 3, average finish inside the top 20. I mean, Torrey's not nearly as predictive as the waste management or some of these other courses, but Torrey's somewhat, it's fairly predictive. Like Taylor Pendrith, somebody else to keep an eye on. He's played very, very well here. Dietrich, 3 for 3. Let's go through some of these metrics, how they've played at the Farmers Insurance Open. So this, again, is not an apples-to-apples comparison because they have the North course to help pad some stats. But at the Farmers, players in the field this week for the Genesis, your leading approach players like Colin, Scotty, a little bit inconsistent. He's 1 for 2. He's got a missed cut. The division will be skewed, but I'm just curious how he's performed at the Farmers. He's got a missed cut and a 20th. So he T20'd, missed the cut, and he missed the cut in his first try in 2020. Okay. Not great, but he does have a T20 here. Homa, in no form at all, but California guy, he's been very good. Finau has been good with the irons. He's just generally been pretty good around Torrey, but he did miss the cut this past Farmers a couple weeks ago. Obear has been really good. Hideki's been really good around Torrey. Zalatoris, there's Keegan again, 4 for 4. He's just been very good around Torrey. And what does Torrey promote? A lot of ball striking, a lot of irons. And that's where Keegan excels, is in his irons. So that's somebody to really kind of think about. There's a lot of talk about Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland's been pretty good with his irons, at least for Torrey. Not a whole lot else, but he is 3 for 4 in the last 5 years. Okay. Talking putting. Let's see your best putters at Torrey, or at least at the Farmers, because this doesn't include the 2021 U.S. Open. Batia, it's only one time. Pavone, when he won, gained a bunch. Kind of came back to earth this year. Hovland, only one try, but gained 4 on the greens. Sungjae has putt extremely well. Sam Stevens has putt well. Eckroat has putt well, but you see the lack of finish. He's only 1 for 4 here. Again, I want to like Eckroat because he's not a good putter. He is putt well here, but can't argue with the fact that he's 1 for 4 with an average finish of 83rd. Bet Taylor Pendrith. Taylor Pendrith is extra chalky, but he has great stats. Yeah, I would think so. I'm tending to agree with you. I like a lot of what Pendrith is offering, at least statistically. Harris English, quite Jekyll and Hyde. There's Dietrich, Justin Thomas 2 for 2. Decent putter, or decent putting at Torrey. Not a decent putter, but decent putting at Torrey. We're going to go to bogey avoidance. Best bogey avoiders at the Farmers past 5 years. Rory, Matias, Sungjae, Zalatoris, Sam Stevens. Like, everything statistically is lining up for Sam Stevens. So yes, Phil, you might very well be a trap. But it's probably one that I'm going to go back to, believing in the fact that he just likes Torrey Pines. And I have to imagine he's pretty cheap. I don't know if he's in the 6Ks, but I'd have to imagine he's not anywhere higher than mid-7s in this loaded field. Will probably depend on his ownership, but I can envision myself going back to that well again. Dietrich, good bogey avoider here. Gary Woodland has avoided quite a few bogeys around Torrey. Hideki, Obear 2 for 2. There's Taylor Pendrith again. All right, last one. Since we're pushed on time, let's take a look at. I'll do 2 more. Let's do the par 4s, 455. Dietrich, Justin Thomas. There's Woodland again. Max Homa, Sam Stevens. Rogers, only 3 for 5. Oh, I think he's an alternate, isn't he? I think. There's Keegan again. You talked about Cameron Young earlier. He's at least playing the par 5s well, but you see his downfall has been the putter, at least at Torrey. Burns, only 1 for 2. Pendrith. And then last one, let's look at 200 plus procs at Torrey. Obear, Scotty, been very good, 200 plus. All of these guys are just one time. Aaron Rye, that's an interesting name this week, considering he's not the longest with the driver. But you want to talk about long irons. Like if you're really looking at Colin Morikawa, which you should, for irons and especially long irons. Look at Aaron Rye. Pretty solid. Hoagie does not have a lot of success here, but hitting his long irons well. Zalatoris. Stevens again here, closer to the bottom of your page. English, Rose. There's Hadwin. What's Hadwin done here? Hadwin doing Hadwin things, losing off the tee, putting well. Hadwin does not have a lot of distance, so that's why it didn't feel like a good fit for Hadwin. You mentioned Harmon, I think, was somebody. He doesn't even have any stats. He just doesn't even come here because he knows this isn't his style, of course. There was somebody else that somebody mentioned. Oh, yeah, it was Hadwin. It was Hadwin because you weren't sure about his distance. At least here at Torrey, it's lacking, Derek. So, but anyway, that is going to be it for the show this evening. Let me sort this back on best average finish. Again, this is at the Farmers, so it's not an apples to apples, but gives you an idea how well they've played Torrey generally past 5 years. That's it for the show this evening. Thanks to Phil and Derek for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Reminder that we'll be live at 9 or maybe a slightly later, as I believe I have a later game on Wednesday for my winter league. Gary Woodland's the scientist play. He very well might be the scientist play for me this week. Kind of depends on ownership for me. That's why Hoygaard was my ownership, mad scientist play last week, because he was a straight pivot off of all the chalk of the 9Ks last week. So I don't hate that shout, Derek. I really don't. But we'll be back Wednesday to try and finalize and optimize our lineups for the Genesis at Torrey Pines. We're going to try and emulate the success. The last successful tournament I had in 2025 was the Farmers. So I'm going to try to build on that and forget these past 2 weeks. Thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Genesis, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Genesis. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.